Rylan Cross had never imagined that one wrong button on an alien device could send his entire life into chaos. He had come to Vareth 6 as part of a small human technical exchange team. Their job was simple: learn from the alien engineers, offer human design ideas, and try not to break anything. Rylan was good at following rules, usually, but the machine he touched that morning was unlike anything he had seen before. It looked like a normal communication console, just sleeker and glowing with soft blue lines. Rylan thought it was harmless to scan it and understand how it worked, but the moment he tried to run a diagnostic with his human tool, every symbol on the screen flashed red. A loud alarm blasted across the room. The glowing lines dimmed and then pulsed sharply like a heartbeat. Within seconds, armored guards stormed inside and surrounded him. Rylan raised his hands, confused and already regretting everything. Before he could speak, they took his tool, scanned his identity, and declared he had interfered with a restricted royal communication array. That word, royal, was enough to trouble even the bravest human. Before he understood what was happening, Rylan was escorted through wide silver halls, then up a large lift that hummed with energy. Every guard stared at him with unreadable expressions. He knew humans were rare on Vareth 6. He also knew that breaking something belonging to royalty, even by accident, was not a small issue. When the lift doors opened, Rylan stepped into a room so large and bright that he blinked several times. The throne hall of the Varethi Queen was famous across the sector. The ceiling curved like a glowing dome, filled with star-like clusters of light. The walls carried tall patterns that shifted in color with every breath of air. But Rylan's attention was pulled instantly to the figure seated on a raised platform at the end of the hall. Queen Araline Vathora was not what he expected. She looked taller than most Varethi he had seen, with soft silver patterns running across her dark violet skin. Her eyes were bright and focused, sharp like someone who could understand more than you said. Her posture was calm, but something in her presence told Rylan she missed nothing. She tapped a slender staff lightly on the floor, and the entire hall fell silent. "Bring the human forward," she said. Her voice was smooth, and every guard seemed to obey instantly. Rylan swallowed and walked forward under the heavy gazes of dozens of aliens. He felt small, very small, but he forced himself to stand straight. He had made a mistake. He would just explain it. Maybe she would understand. The Queen's eyes studied him carefully. "State your name." "Rylan Cross, Your Majesty," he answered, trying not to let his voice shake. "You interfered with a royal communication device," she said, not angry, not loud, just firm. "Explain." Rylan took a slow breath. "I thought it was a normal console. My scanner must have clashed with your system. I didn't know it belonged to the royal network. I didn't mean any harm." The Queen watched him for a long moment. Most rulers he had read about liked showing power, but Araline seemed to prefer studying people, trying to see their truth before choosing a reaction. "It was careless," she said softly, "but your honesty is clear." Every guard looked at the Queen in surprise. Rylan felt a tiny spark of relief. Then she continued, "You are still responsible for the disruption. Our law demands correction." Rylan froze. "Correction, ma'am?" "It is not punishment," the Queen explained. "It is a process to teach discipline and awareness. You will complete tasks under supervision. You will understand the value of caution on my world." Her tone was calm, but final. Rylan nodded quickly. He wasn't about to argue with a queen. The Queen dismissed the court, and 2 guards escorted him into a different wing of the palace. Instead of a prison, they took him to a large working chamber filled with damaged devices, storage crates, glowing panels, and a group of Varethi engineers. A senior engineer approached, tall, 4-armed, with a wide crest on his head. "You are the human who broke the array," he said in a heavy voice. Rylan winced. "Yes, Sorry. You will repair systems here, the engineer said. If you work well, your correction period will be short. If not, you will stay longer. Rylan nodded again. I'll do my best. He meant it. He didn't want to disappoint anyone again. The engineers assigned him tasks one by one. Some machines were half shattered, others flickering with unstable energy. Rylan rolled up his sleeves and got to work. He was surprised to find that some Varethi technology wasn't too different from the prototypes he had repaired on Earth. He worked quietly but efficiently, checking wiring, testing power lines, and replacing damaged cores. At first, the engineers watched him closely, expecting him to break something else, but soon their expressions changed. Rylan caught their surprise whenever he solved a problem quickly or showed a technique they hadn't tried. One engineer even muttered, "Humans are strange. They are fragile, yet brave with unstable tech." Rylan smiled to himself but kept working. Hours passed. Sweat ran down his forehead. But every time he finished a repair, he felt a little less guilty about the accident. He wanted to prove humans weren't careless or foolish. When the palace lights dimmed to evening mode, Rylan wiped his hands and prepared to leave for the small guest room they had assigned him. But before he stepped out of the workshop, a guard approached. "The Queen wishes to observe your progress," the guard announced. Rylan blinked. "Now?" "Yes. Come." His stomach tightened. He hoped he hadn't messed up anything again. As he followed the guard back to the hall, he felt nervous. What if the Queen thought his work wasn't good enough? What if she decided he needed harsher correction? The doors opened, and Rylan stepped into an observation chamber where the Queen stood near a large, transparent screen. She looked calm, almost thoughtful, as she reviewed the list of repairs he had completed. "You fixed 23 systems in one day," she said without turning. "Most new technicians complete 8. Rylan cleared his throat. "Humans work fast when they feel guilty." The Queen finally looked at him. Her expression softened slightly. "You are unusually honest for someone facing judgment." Rylan shrugged weakly. "It's easier than lying. Lying just makes trouble bigger." Araline seemed amused by that. She stepped closer, studying him like he was a curious puzzle. "Your species is unpredictable. Some humans fear authority, some challenge it, and some—" She paused. "Some stand calmly in front of a queen even when they made a mistake." Rylan smiled nervously. "I was more scared earlier. I just got tired during the work." "Your performance was good," the Queen said. "Better than expected. You show responsibility." Rylan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. But then Araline tilted her head slightly, her tone shifting just enough to catch him off guard. "Human," she said quietly. "If you were single, I'd give you my number." Rylan blinked. The guards outside the chamber froze. 2 engineers carrying tools stopped mid-walk. Even the palace sensors seemed to hum differently. Rylan had no idea that in Varethi culture, offering a number was equal to a personal connection. Rare, intimate, and not given lightly. He laughed awkwardly, thinking she was joking. Thank you, I think." The Queen straightened instantly, her calm expression returning so quickly it almost seemed unrealistic. "Ignore that comment. It was an impulsive remark." Rylan nodded, still confused. Maybe alien queens had strange humor. The Queen dismissed him, but as he walked down the hall he overheard 2 Varethi guards whispering in shock. Did she really say that? To a human? He must be important to her. Rylan felt his heart skip a beat. Important? Him? That seemed impossible. He had only been here one day. He had only fixed things and tried not to cause trouble. But the Queen's tone, that small shift in her voice when she spoke to him, it stayed in his mind like an echo. He didn't understand what it meant, and he wasn't brave enough to think too much about it yet. But one thing was clear. His correction period was not going to be normal. The Queen had taken interest in him, even if she tried to hide it. And on a world where humans were rare and carefully observed, that interest would change everything. Rylan woke the next morning to the soft hum of the palace. The corridors of Vareth 6 were quiet now, almost peaceful compared to the chaos of yesterday. He had slept poorly, thinking about the Queen's strange remark. He told himself repeatedly that he was overreacting. A queen offering her number? Surely it was just a joke, or maybe a cultural nuance he didn't understand. Humans weren't used to alien customs, and he reminded himself constantly not to read too much into it. Still, his thoughts kept drifting back to the Queen. There was something about her that made him feel both nervous and strangely encouraged. She was powerful, confident, and completely unlike anyone he had ever met. Humans admired strength and courage, and here was a being who possessed both in abundance. But she also seemed curious about him, which was unexpected. His correction tasks for the day were far more complex than before. A large sector of the palace's power distribution network had been destabilized by the device he had accidentally tampered with. Engineers had been working for weeks to stabilize it, but Rylan's human perspective offered fresh insight. When he suggested a small modification to the energy regulators, a technique no Varethi had attempted, the lead engineer hesitated. "Are you sure, human?" the engineer asked. Rylan nodded. "Yes. If you divert the power through these nodes first, it should balance without overloading the main grid." They exchanged a few glances. Then, cautiously, the Varethi team implemented his idea. Within minutes, the energy fluctuations calmed. Panels that had flickered dangerously now glowed steadily. The lead engineer's eyes widened. "Remarkable. You understand our systems differently than we do." Rylan felt a small surge of pride. "I just tried thinking logically. Humans aren't always perfect, but we notice patterns." Word of his success spread quickly. By mid-afternoon, Queen Araline requested to review his work personally. Rylan felt a familiar tightness in his chest as he walked to the observation chamber. He wasn't sure whether to be honored, nervous, or both. When he arrived, Araline was already there, observing the repaired systems on the crystal display. She didn't speak at first, simply watching as he explained the technical adjustments. Her eyes followed every movement, every gesture, as if she were trying to understand not just the machine, but the person behind the hands that had fixed it. "You see efficiency differently," she said finally, her voice calm and precise. "Your approach is human, unexpected, effective." Rylan smiled faintly. "I guess humans have a lot of trial and error. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we learn fast." Araline tilted her head, studying him with curiosity. "You do not fear failure, even under observation. That is rare." "I've failed plenty," Rylan admitted. "I just try not to give up. It usually works better than quitting." The Queen's lips curved slightly. "And yet, you do not seem arrogant about your success. Confidence without arrogance is uncommon among your species." Rylan blinked, unsure whether this was a compliment or a test. "I thank you, Your Majesty. I just want to do my job right." She regarded him silently for a few moments, then leaned slightly closer. Her tone shifted, softening in a way that made Rylan's heart skip. "You are intriguing, human. Few of your kind arrive here, and fewer still leave a lasting impression. You have a way of standing out without demanding attention." Rylan laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm probably just lucky." The Queen studied him a little longer, then straightened. "Luck, perhaps. Or instinct. Perhaps both. In any case, your performance today warrants special notice. Continue your work at this pace." and your correction will be completed sooner than expected." Rylan felt a rush of relief. A sense of accomplishment mingled with an unexplainable thrill. He realized he wanted to impress her, not just for his own sake, but because he was beginning to respect her as well. Over the next several days, Ryland's tasks grew more challenging. He stabilized ancient security systems, repaired intricate energy conduits, and recalibrated communication arrays that had been dormant for decades. Every success brought him more attention, but the Queen's observation remained the most significant. She asked questions about Earth, about humans, about why he chose to approach problems in the way he did. "You work differently from my engineers," she said one morning. "They rely on years of tradition. You rely on intuition and creativity." Ryland shrugged. "Sometimes it's the only way to solve something new. You can't just repeat what was done before." The Queen's eyes glimmered. "You are persistent. I wonder if that is why you succeed where others would fail." Ryland hesitated, sensing that this was no longer simply about technical skills. He was beginning to understand that the Queen's curiosity about him was personal, not purely professional. Still, he kept his responses simple, careful, and respectful. Then came the day when an unexpected malfunction threatened the palace itself. One of the main power cores began overheating, and alarms blared throughout the corridors. Guards rushed past, and engineers scrambled to contain the problem, but none of their efforts worked. The readings showed that if the core reached critical levels, it could cause widespread destruction. Rylan was nearby when the alert sounded. Without waiting for permission, he ran toward the control room. "Step aside!" he shouted to the panicked engineers. "I need space to stabilize the core." The lead engineer hesitated. "This is dangerous." "I know," Rylan said calmly. "Just follow my instructions." He moved quickly, connecting auxiliary stabilizers, rerouting energy, and adjusting power flow in ways the Varithi engineers hadn't considered. Sweat dripped from his brow, and sparks flew dangerously close, but he didn't stop. His hands moved swiftly, almost instinctively, coordinating the system until the core's energy settled. The alarms ceased, the flickering lights steadied. The palace was safe. Queen Araline arrived just moments later, her expression unreadable at first. Then, slowly, she stepped closer, studying the human who had risked himself to save her palace. "You acted without hesitation," she said softly. "Your instinct to protect is remarkable." Rylan wiped his hands on his sleeves and gave a small, tired smile. "It's what anyone should do in a crisis. I couldn't just stand there." Araline regarded him silently for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Humans, you are unpredictable, and yet admirable. Perhaps that is why I notice you more than I expected." Rylan felt a strange warmth at her words. He wasn't sure how to respond. He had never received such personal acknowledgement from anyone, let alone a being as powerful and dignified as a queen. Days passed, and Rylan's connection with the Queen deepened, though still formal in public. She continued to observe him, ask questions, and sometimes challenge him with tasks designed to test not only his skills, but his patience and judgment. Through it all, Rylan noticed subtle changes in her behavior. Small gestures, lingering glances, and slight tones of amusement or curiosity indicated that she was intrigued by him personally. He wasn't sure how to interpret these signals. Was it respect? Curiosity? Something more? Then, during one evening session, while he was calibrating a complex communication array, Araline approached him quietly. "Human," she said, "you continue to impress me. Most beings under observation would falter by now, yet you thrive. You do not seek praise, yet it follows you. You are unusual." Rylan looked up, slightly embarrassed. "I'm just trying to do what I can. That's all." The Queen's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Your humility is rare. Many beings become arrogant with recognition. You do not. That is why you stand out. He swallowed, sensing the weight behind her words. The Queen was speaking honestly, and it was clear that her observation had moved beyond professional interest. Then quietly, almost as if testing the waters, she added, "If you were single, perhaps I would consider offering you my number?" Rylan froze, his hands gripping the tools he was holding. The words echoed in his mind. He remembered the first time she had said something similar, but now it carried a different tone, less teasing, more thoughtful. I am," he stammered. "Single, I mean." Aralene's eyes widened slightly. She quickly composed herself, turning her attention back to the array, though her posture suggested she was very aware of him. "Ignore that remark," she said softly. "It was impulsive. Focus on your work." Rylan nodded, but his mind raced. The Queen's attention was not something trivial. On Vareth 6, personal acknowledgement from royalty was significant. For a human to receive such attention, it was extraordinary. As he continued his work, he realized something important. The Queen's curiosity and subtle admiration made him want to do better, not just for her, but for himself. He felt capable, valued, and respected in a way he had never experienced before. By the end of the day, Rylan was exhausted but exhilarated. He had survived his correction period so far, repaired complex systems, and even caught the Queen's attention in ways that might shape his future on Vareth 6. As he prepared to leave the chamber, he glanced at the Queen once more. She was already looking at the glowing city below the palace, her expression calm but thoughtful. Rylan felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. He knew that the days ahead would test him further, but he also sensed that something extraordinary was beginning, something beyond repair work and correction. The Queen had noticed him. The galaxy had noticed him. And somehow, against all odds, he was beginning to notice her too. The days that followed were tense, but productive. Rylan continued his correction tasks under Queen Aralene's watchful eye. His success with complex systems had earned him quiet respect from the engineers, who now consulted him willingly instead of observing nervously. But while Rylan's work flourished, the palace itself was not without danger. Unbeknownst to him, a faction of Varethi nobles had begun whispering among themselves. They were displeased with the Queen's attention toward a human, a mere outsider with no lineage or claim to power. In their eyes, allowing a human such influence, even indirectly, was an insult to the Varethi Empire. Some argued quietly that Rylan's presence threatened centuries of tradition and hierarchy. Others, more impatient, spoke of plotting ways to remove him entirely. Rylan remained unaware of these machinations. His days were filled with repairing ancient communication hubs, recalibrating energy grids, and troubleshooting delicate palace machinery. He continued to impress Queen Aralene, who increasingly sought his insight, not just for repairs, but for understanding his unusual human perspective. "You think differently," she said one morning as they examined a power conduit together. "Where we see obstacles, you see solutions. Where we hesitate, you act." Rylan shrugged, focusing on the delicate wiring. "Humans adapt. We don't always know the rules, but we try to make things work anyway." Aralene's lips curved into a faint smile. "You are persistent, human. Even when others fail or give up, you continue. That quality, it is valuable." Rylan glanced up, meeting her eyes. There was a sincerity in her gaze that made him feel both proud and uneasy. He was used to being judged on skill alone. Here, he was being measured on character, on instinct, on heart. Then came the first real sign of trouble. A communication relay near the palace's outer sector exploded suddenly, sending sparks flying and alarms blaring. Guards rushed past, engines roared, and the palace trembled slightly. Rylan didn't hesitate. He ran toward the danger zone with the engineers trailing him. When he arrived, he realized immediately that this was no ordinary malfunction. The relay had been tampered with. Wires had been cut deliberately, safeguards disabled. Someone intended for this to fail. Rylan quickly assessed the damage, barking orders to the engineers. "Seal the power lines. Redirect auxiliary circuits. Move." His voice was calm but commanding. Even under stress, his hands moved with precise efficiency, rewiring and stabilizing the system before further damage could occur. From a balcony above, Queen Araline watched silently. Her violet eyes were sharp as they followed every action. For the first time, she realized that the human she had been observing so closely was capable not only of skill, but of courage under direct threat. When the final circuit clicked into place and the alarms ceased, the engineers looked at Rylan in awe. He was breathing hard, sweat dripping from his brow, yet his calm eyes scanned the area to ensure everything was secure. Araline descended the balcony, her presence commanding yet almost gentle. "You acted decisively," she said. "Most beings would have frozen or failed. You did not." Rylan shook his head, embarrassed. "I just did what had to be done. The damage could have been worse if no one acted fast." She studied him silently, as if measuring something deeper. "You are unlike any being I have encountered before. Humans are rare on Vareth 6, but you are exceptional." Rylan felt his chest tighten. He didn't fully understand her words, but he knew she meant them sincerely. The Queen, with all her power and influence, was acknowledging him in a way no other being ever had. The days after the incident brought heightened tension. The Queen assigned Rylan more complex repairs, but also asked him to train select engineers in human-style problem-solving. It was subtle, almost playful, but every session drew him closer to her. She would watch him explain techniques, sometimes offering small suggestions herself, and sometimes teasing him quietly with comments that left him slightly flustered. "You are unusually patient for your species," she remarked once as they calibrated a delicate energy matrix. Most humans would grow frustrated with repeated failures. "I just keep trying," Rylan said. "Frustration doesn't solve anything." Araline tilted her head, studying him. "You are disciplined in ways I did not anticipate. Most beings obey rules because they must. You obey rules because you choose to." Rylan smiled, a little embarrassed by the praise. "I guess I just like doing things right." But while Rylan and the Queen built trust and admiration, the nobles who opposed him moved in secret. One evening, while the palace slept, they attempted sabotage. They tampered with the main energy grid near the royal chambers, hoping to create an emergency that would either discredit the Queen's judgment or endanger the human. The sabotage triggered alarms instantly. This time, Rylan was ready. He had learned the palace layout, the system's weaknesses, and the engineer's methods. Without hesitation, he raced toward the core, assessing the situation. Sparks flew dangerously close, and a thick, acrid smoke filled the chamber. Rylan did not panic. His mind worked rapidly, identifying the altered circuits and bypassing the sabotage. He coordinated the engineers with clear, calm commands. "Redirect the stabilizers. Seal the conduit. We'll reroute energy through the auxiliary nodes." Minutes felt like hours, but slowly, the systems stabilized. The palace lights brightened, alarms stopped blaring, and the immediate danger passed. Rylan leaned against a wall, exhausted, but relieved. Queen Araline arrived moments later. Her steps were swift, her expression a mixture of anger and relief. She surveyed the repaired systems, then looked at Rylan. "You acted quickly," she said softly. "Your judgment saved the palace, and many lives." Rylan wiped his forehead. "I didn't have a choice. I couldn't let it fail." The Queen's eyes softened as she stepped closer. "I know. That is why you intrigue me, human. You are brave without seeking glory. You act without hesitation. You are remarkable." Rylan felt a strange warmth at her words. He wanted to say something, but no words came. The admiration in her gaze was overwhelming, and he realized she truly saw him, not just his skills, but the person behind them. The following days were tense as the Queen addressed the attempted sabotage. The corrupt nobles were identified and stripped of influence, though they remained in the palace under watchful eyes. Rylan, though still a human outsider, had earned a unique position: honorary engineer and trusted problem solver. Despite the relief, the palace buzzed with whispers about the Queen and the human. Guards exchanged uncertain glances. Engineers shared quiet stories of Rylan's bravery. Even the palace staff seemed curious about the unusual bond forming between human and monarch. Rylan tried to focus on his work, but he could not ignore the subtle changes in Aralene's behavior. She would observe him closely, sometimes offering a quiet smile or a teasing remark. Once, while they inspected a repaired communication array, she said lightly, "You are not as fragile as I expected. Perhaps humans are stronger than I imagined." Rylan laughed nervously. "We have to be, otherwise we wouldn't survive very long." Aralene's gaze lingered, thoughtful and quiet. "You are different." Rylan Cross, "I find your perspective valuable, and your courage admirable." The words echoed in his mind: courage, value, admiration. They were not just about his technical skills. They were about him as a human, standing in a world far different from his own. That evening, as Rylan walked through the quiet palace halls, he reflected on how much had changed. He had arrived as a simple engineer, mistaken and frightened. Now he was trusted by the Queen, admired by the engineers, and respected even by those who doubted humans. Yet more importantly, he realized he was becoming aware of something he had never expected: a growing sense of connection with the Queen herself. He remembered her earlier words, spoken quietly, almost in passing. "If you were single, perhaps I would consider offering you my number." For a human, the idea of such personal acknowledgement from a being so powerful and distant was almost unimaginable. Yet now, after days of observing his skills, courage, and character, he felt it was no longer a joke. Aralene had noticed him. She had trusted him. She had admired him. And perhaps she had begun to care. Rylan knew the days ahead would be difficult. There would be more tasks, more scrutiny, and perhaps more challenges from those who opposed him. But for the first time, he felt confident, not just in his abilities, but in his place here. He had earned respect, trust, and a rare kind of attention that humans seldom received on alien worlds. As he paused at the balcony overlooking the glowing city below, Rylan made a silent promise to himself. He would continue to do his best, not just to complete his correction, but to prove that humans could not only survive in the Varithi Empire, they could thrive. And perhaps, just perhaps, he could show the Queen that humans were worth noticing in ways far beyond skill or ingenuity. For now, he understood one simple truth. In a galaxy where humans were rare, he had become someone the Queen could trust, and that was a beginning unlike any other. The days following the sabotage incident were quieter, but tension still lingered in the palace air. The corrupt nobles who had attempted the attack were under strict surveillance, and the Queen made it clear that any further interference would be met with immediate punishment. Yet, despite the order and stability, a new kind of unease filled the halls, one born not from danger, but from expectation. Rylan found himself busier than ever. He was no longer a simple correctional human. He was now a trusted problem solver, consulted on nearly every technical matter. He worked alongside Varethi engineers to upgrade systems, stabilize communication networks, and repair aging equipment that had long been ignored. With every task, his confidence grew. And with every task, he felt the Queen's presence watching him, sometimes from afar, sometimes near enough that he could feel her quiet attention. One evening, while checking a newly repaired energy conduit near the palace's central tower, Rylan was surprised to see the Queen herself approach. She moved silently, her violet eyes focused on him. "You work late," she observed. "I wanted to make sure the conduit is stable before the night cycle," Rylan said, trying to sound casual. Araline nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. "Your dedication, it is admirable. Most beings would have completed their tasks and retired for rest. You persist." Rylan smiled faintly. "Humans don't give up easily. We try to fix things no matter how hard." The Queen tilted her head. "And yet, you do not seek reward. Recognition does not seem important to you." "I like to do things right," Rylan admitted. "It feels good to see a system working as it should." Araline studied him quietly, as if measuring the depth of his words. "That quality, it is rare among all beings. Even those born into privilege or power often act out of obligation or pride. You act because you choose to. That is why I trust you." Rylan's chest tightened. The word trust from the Queen itself was extraordinary. Trust on Vareth 6 was not given lightly, and here, a human, a mere outsider, had earned it through determination, skill, and courage. The Queen moved a step closer, and for a moment, the usual distance between ruler and human seemed to vanish. "There is something I must offer you," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that made Rylan's heart race. Rylan swallowed. I don't understand." "You were here as a correctional human," she said, "yet you have proven yourself beyond all expectation. You have saved the palace and my people. You have acted with courage, honesty, and ingenuity. For that, you deserve recognition and choice." Rylan blinked. "Choice?" Araline nodded, her gaze steady and sincere. "You may return to your world, Rylan Cross. You are free to leave at any moment. Or, you may stay. You may remain in my palace as an honorary engineer, a trusted advisor, and perhaps more." Rylan felt his mind spin. Stay, leave, his world, Earth, was familiar, safe, and yet he had never encountered anything like Vareth 6, its people, or the Queen. And now, this offer, this unprecedented personal acknowledgement from one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, it was almost overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "You need not speak immediately," Araline said. "Consider your choice carefully. But know this, your skills and character are valued here, and your presence is wanted." Rylan nodded, though he knew no simple words could convey what he felt. He left the chamber that night with a mind full of thoughts, walking through the silent halls of the palace. The city lights below shimmered like distant stars, and he realized how far he had come. From a human who had accidentally broken a royal array, he was now someone the Queen trusted, respected, and perhaps even admired. Over the following days, Rylan completed final repairs on the palace's systems, ensuring stability throughout the network. Each success strengthened his sense of purpose, but he could not stop thinking about the Queen's words. Her acknowledgement of his courage, her subtle teasing, her rare glimpse of personal interest. All of it lingered in his mind like a constant hum. Then, one morning, the Queen summoned him privately. He found her waiting in the observation chamber, the panoramic view of the city below casting soft light across her features. Her expression was calm, but tinged with curiosity. "You have thought about my offer," she said, her voice gentle. Rylan nodded slowly. "I have. And I've decided. I want to stay." Aralene's eyes widened slightly, and then a faint smile appeared on her lips. "You choose wisely, human. Few beings would understand the value of such a choice, yet you see it clearly." Rylan swallowed, feeling a mixture of relief and excitement. I want to help. I want to learn. And I want to be here." The Queen studied him closely, then stepped forward. "There is one more matter," she said quietly, leaning slightly closer. "Earlier, I made a remark that was unusual for one of my position." Rylan felt his pulse quicken. "You mean about the number?" "Yes," she said, her tone soft but precise. "It was not a casual comment. I meant it. If you were single, and you are, then I wish to offer you a personal connection, one that is rare, significant, and binding in a way that honors both our species." Rylan's mind raced. The enormity of her words sank in slowly. In Varithi culture, personal acknowledgement was a gift of trust and respect, a bond that carried weight far beyond human conventions. And here, she was offering it to him, a human, outsider, correctional technician, now trusted and valued beyond expectation. I accept," Rylan said finally, his voice steady but full of emotion. Aralene's smile widened slightly, though she remained composed. "Then it is done. You will remain in the palace with full recognition of your skills, your courage, and your presence." From that moment, the dynamic between them shifted subtly. In public, Rylan continued his work with humility and efficiency, earning admiration from the engineers and even cautious respect from some of the remaining nobles. In private, he shared small moments with the Queen, discussions about technology, philosophy, and human culture. She often teased him, asked questions, and sometimes revealed glimpses of vulnerability and curiosity that she rarely showed anyone else. One evening, after a long day repairing and upgrading communication arrays, Aralene led him to the palace balcony. The city lights below shimmered like a river of stars. She leaned slightly on the railing, silent for a few moments. "You have changed much since your arrival," she said finally. Rylan nodded, looking out at the city. "I've learned a lot, and I've grown, not just in skills, but in understanding your world, your people." Aralene turned to him, her violet eyes catching the light. "And you have taught me something as well, human, that outsiders can be brave, capable, and honorable, that they can be trusted, that they can matter." Rylan felt a warmth he had never experienced. "I never imagined I would be here, or that I'd be important." "You are," she said simply. "Important. To me, to the palace, and to the future of our people. Never doubt that." For the first time, Rylan realized the full extent of his journey. He had arrived as a human outsider, unprepared and mistaken. He had been corrected, tested, and challenged. He had faced danger, sabotage, and doubt. Yet through persistence, skill, courage, and honesty, he had earned not only trust but a unique place in a world that was once foreign to him. And in that realization, he understood another truth. Humans, no matter how ordinary they might seem, had a capacity to thrive, even in the most alien, intimidating circumstances. They could earn respect, trust, and even admiration from beings far beyond their own world. The Queen's hand brushed against his lightly, a subtle gesture of acknowledgement and connection. "You are more remarkable than most beings I have ever known," she said quietly. Rylan smiled, feeling a sense of purpose and belonging he had never felt before. "Thank you, Your Majesty," I will not disappoint you. You never have, Araline said softly. And I suspect you never will. As they stood together, watching the city glow beneath them, Rylan realized that the journey ahead would not be easy. Challenges would continue to arise, and the galaxy would remain unpredictable and vast. Yet for the first time, he felt prepared, not just because of his skills, but because he had earned trust, respect, and a rare kind of connection with one of the most powerful beings in existence. And in that moment, he knew. Humans could not only survive in the Varethi Empire, they could thrive and perhaps even shape the future. The night stretched on, quiet and peaceful. For the first time, Rylan allowed himself to imagine a life not as a visitor, but as a part of this world. Beside him stood Queen Araline, not as a distant ruler, but as someone who saw him for who he truly was, a human who had proven his worth, earned trust, and found a place in a galaxy far from home. And perhaps, just perhaps, one day the galaxy would remember that humans, small, fragile, persistent, and courageous, had left their mark, not through conquest or force, but through determination, ingenuity, and heart.